Cabinet Secretary Arthur Sinodinos joined me from Canberra earlier. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you, Lee.
Do these changes to the superannuation policy actually make it a better policy, or is it just a way of appeasing your own backbench?
Lee, I think it does make it a better policy because it makes clearer what our intent was, which is that we're going to reduce the concessionality of the superannuation system in a way which avoids any confusion about backdating, arguments about retrospectivity, and therefore makes it, I think, easier for everybody to understand and accept what we've done.
So then why wasn't this plan proposed from the start, or at the very least adapted early on when these concerns were first raised?
That's a good point. We went through quite an exhaustive process in the lead up to the budget in looking at options, and the fact of the matter is we thought we'd found the right option at the time, but as you saw, there's been debate since, and we've been flexible enough and I think humble enough to accept that change had to be made, and we've made those changes.
Is the lesson from it that things need to go to the party room sooner?
Well, the tradition is, Lee, that you unveil things in the budget to the party room that particular night. But for major reforms in other contexts, it is always desirable, where possible, to have a process of perhaps doing them in a slightly different context and giving yourself more time to potentially iron them out. But the fact of the matter is we wanted the budget to be the launch pad for the election. It laid out our whole fully costed program and plan, and that was the plan we stuck to.
In an effort to be consultative and not to repeat the mistakes of his first term as Liberal leader, is Malcolm Turnbull giving the backbench too much authority and too much say?
I have a great respect for the party room. Ever since I came back as an MP rather than an advisor in 2011, I've marvelled at the way in which the party room on occasion can, through the wisdom of crowds, actually improve things. I don't believe that there can be such a thing as too much consultation on major changes. We are talking about changes which are probably the biggest changes in the superannuation taxation system since super was introduced 25 or so years ago.
Before the election, the Prime Minister said that the superannuation policy was ironclad, and now you've gone a different path. Why then do you keep using the fact that you went to the election with the plebiscite policy as grounds to then say, oh well, if the plebiscite doesn't get through, we can't go a different way on that?
Well, look, what we've done with superannuation is, I think, retain the overall integrity of the package. There's a particular measure we've dealt with, the non-concessional contribution caps. We've replaced it with other measures and we've paid for that. But that's essentially to preserve the measure as we, in its essentials, put to the public. It's the same with the plebiscite. It's essentially what we want to do is get up the particular measure that we did promise the public, which was that they would have a say in relation to same-sex marriage.
But if that doesn't get through the Parliament, then what's your plan B?
Well, at the moment our plan is to keep the pressure on Labor and others to help us keep our promises on this. It was a major promise that we made. It was out there in front. No one can say it was they were suddenly ambushed by it. We made that promise. It's there. I go to community groups, including churches, who say that they're happy that the government is giving them a say on this particular matter. And I think that's a good thing to do.
But if the plebiscite isn't able to occur, will the coalition look for a different path to legalise same-sex marriage?
Well, I am working, Malcolm is working, Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister, and others are working on getting this thing through, because this is, I think, the best shot we have to get something done, and done in a way which makes change stick.
But Labor has indicated that they're very unlikely to support it, so I'm just asking pragmatically, will you then look for a different path?
Well, pragmatically, it's going to be difficult for us or the Parliament to do anything, but what we want is, please help us keep our promise. We get lambasted sometimes in politics as politicians. Why haven't you kept X or Y promise? Here we're saying there's a pathway through to keep this promise. Please help us do that.
On Pauline Hanson's speech to the Senate yesterday, are coalition MPs scared of Pauline Hanson? Are you scared that she is attractive to people who might normally vote for the coalition and you don't want to offend them?
We always look at who's voted for other parties and we look at why they voted for them, and then we seek, as we did 20 years ago with her, figure out, OK, why are people attracted to her? What do we need to do to deal with grievances or issues certain people in the community may have? who then go to vehicles for protest, which is what she is. She's like the Pup Party and others in previous elections. She's a vehicle for protest. What are the grievances and how do we address those? We've done it before, we'll do it again. She's a very smart politician. She's essentially just recycling what she's done before. She's got a new, different cast of villains, and off we go. But we're not going to fall into the trap of beating up on her, increasing her prominence, which then attracts more people potentially to her.
Senator Sinodinos, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Lee.